Welcome back to another episode of the Nerdy Hooper Show. We have been gone for about a month, I would say, maybe a little more. We got really busy with ending of school and college and stuff like that. So work and basketball. But we're back finally with an absolute banger episode with ESPN NBA analyst Tim Bontemps. And you guys have probably noticed too that my usual co-host Branson is not here, so he's actually golfing right now. So if you see him, you can tell him But we have Ethan Shields. He's one of my good friends and also another player on the basketball team for Randolph. So Ethan is going to be the co-host for today, and who knows, maybe for a few more, for however many episodes we got coming up. So Tim Bontemps, I'll let him talk about himself in a second, but he came to one of our games this year, and he got inducted into the Randolph Hall of Fame and graduated from Randolph and is now an analyst for ESPN, and he'll get into more specifics. But it was just cool to be able to talk to him. We've already had a conversation at my house, actually, before all of this. And so when I started this, I knew that I was definitely going to want to have him on the show. And what not a better time than, on the comeback. So, Tim, if you want to just get into, your story and how you got to where you are, that'd be awesome.
Sure. Thanks, Tyler. Well, appreciate you guys having me. It's good to see you both. Congrats on the way your season played out, though I wish I'd got a chance to get up there and see you guys win the section, but it was cool to watch from afar when I was at NBA games, when NBA games were allowed to be played, at least in the past. So I went to Randolph High School, played basketball there, went to Bonaventure, studied journalism there, worked in journalism for, I guess, a long time. Was it 12, 13 years now, I guess, because I'm old. Was at the New York Post, then at the Washington Post, now I'm at ESPN. And now I'm currently in Orlando at the Bubble, as you referenced, here for the big restart. I think this is coming out on Friday, so by now we'll have seen a couple games. But it's fun to be down here, fun to be around basketball again, and excited to see how this whole thing is going to shake out.
All right, sweet. And I know Branson, when he was on here before, because you used to do the sports betting and stuff like that, he was going to ask you about all that because he's big into that. But when Tim was here at my house, he talked about how he used to stay up like all night writing, I mean, it's crazy the amount of work that he's done. And actually, when I really thought about Tim, was I was on Twitter, scrolling through Twitter, and I saw a video of Russell Westbrook, because he's had a kind of track record with the media, and he kind of freaked out on one of the reporters. And I look, and in the background, I saw that Tim Bontemps was there, and I saw him, and I was like, oh, and I asked my dad, I was like, Dad, you know Tim Bontemps, right? And he was like, do I know Tim Bontemps? Of course I know Tim Bontemps.
That's right. Your dad knows me forever.
Yep. And so, yeah, that's kind of how we got introduced more.
We got introduced when you were born, and I would come to the house for spaghetti dinners before basketball games, and your mom would make them, and you would be there with your mom and your dad. That's when we got introduced. That was just a very long time ago. So
right.
More recently. I've been following you guys all along the whole time. It's been fun to watch y'all have the success you're having. It's pretty cool.
Yep. So you're in the bubble right now. How is everything? Like, is it all like, I mean, what are like the rules? Are there like special regulations or something like that you have to follow?
Well, there's a bunch of rules. I'm like kind of next to the bubble, I would guess I would call it. So I can go to the games, but I can't interact with any of the players or coaches in person. There are people who are like literally in the bubble who they can go to practice and shoot around, and they can go to games and like interview people and stuff. I'm kind of a step removed. all the broadcast teams like Mike Breen and those guys who you see call the games, Kevin Harlan, they're all where I am. We're all kind of in the second tier. So like we get tested a couple times a week, and we're in a hotel that's kind of separate from everything. But otherwise, like I got here, I got tested. I got down here on Tuesday. I got tested Tuesday morning. Passed my test, so then I was able to move around a little bit. Got a credential, went and looked at the arenas and stuff today. I mean, the whole setup is really remarkable. I mean, it kind of takes an army to put together something like this with all the different stuff that has to come together for this all to work. But the NBA deserves a lot of credit. We're over 3 weeks in. There hasn't been a single positive test yet. Knock on wood. Hopefully it stays that way for everybody's sake. Right. And it seems like, they've got a really good chance of pulling this thing off with people healthy and playing basketball, which, is certainly about as good as they could have hoped for. And they thought this thing up a couple months ago.
Right. And, yeah, I see on like Instagram, like there's like the 3 courts and like the 3 different teams, like does each team have their own court?
No. So what happened was they have like a giant ballroom set up for teams to practice in at a hotel. It's like, I think it's in a convention center. I'm not exactly sure. But I think the Pacers were having their court renovated. So they brought the Pacers court down. So it wasn't going to be down anyway. And then the Heat brought their court up from Miami, and I think they used 2 of the Orlando Magic courts from across town. So they didn't have every team bring their own practice court to work on. It was kind of like, hey, here's a few that are easy for us to get here. Let's bring them here, and then give us an extra option for teams to come in and get shots, guys to get shots up, and for teams to practice. Because obviously, if you have 22 teams all trying to practice and get ready for games, you got to have a lot of courts for everybody to have the amount of time they need to be ready to go.
Right.
Do the teams kind of have to work with each other to schedule practices and shoot around so they're not conflicting, obviously, with a lot of teams and not a lot of courts?
So the league is in charge of all that stuff. They kind of have their own practice schedule for everybody, Ethan. They give people every day, it's like, if you want to practice, you have this window. Do you want to practice? And then teams kind of decide if they're going to have the day off or not. So it's not quite up to the teams. I think at night, guys are able to go shoot, I think for an hour. There's an open hour where guys can go back and get work in. I think that is more of a thing where they have to kind of sort it out between teams because there's only so many baskets. But a lot of this stuff, I think the best way to put it is that everybody understands this thing is pretty complex and pretty hard. And if there's stuff like, hey, I can't get on the court at this time, or I can't do this, or the food's not great, or whatever, everybody involved, I think, kind of understands just how hard this thing has been to pull off and how complicated and challenging it is. And so I think everybody's just trying to give the league as much leeway as possible to say, all right, we might not be thrilled with this one thing, but if you can work with us on the next thing, it'll be all right. Because it's just a lot of this is just so crazy and complex to put together that, I think everybody understands now that they're in it, that everything's not going to be perfect. You've just got to kind of roll with the punches as they come.
Right. And with that, this was a hot topic this week, but with the Lou Williams situation,
mm-hmm.
If you don't know, he was spotted, or he took a picture with a rapper at a strip club. And I watched the video, and they said that their wings are amazing. So he was just picking up food and whatever. But because he left for a family emergency or whatever. I don't know what the whole story was, but how's the NBA handling that? If guys, because I saw that Alex Caruso missed his sister's wedding to stay in the bubble. So how do you separate those emergency leaves versus a Lou Williams who is spotted at a strip club? Should there be I don't know the right word, but I can't think of it.
Well, I got you. Well, here's the way this is kind of going. So Alex Caruso could have left and gone to this wedding. His sister is, I think, getting married or just got married in Texas. I think it's in a closed. I think it was in some kind of convention center, and there were going to be 150 people there.
Oh.
So the NBA said, listen, you can go to this event. My colleague Zach Lowe reported about this last week. you could go to this event, but if you come back, you're going to have to quarantine for a long time because this is not a safe, this is like a extra high risk thing because you're in this enclosed space in an area where there's been a lot of COVID cases, right? And so the league really wanted to make sure that things were kind of buttoned up and there wasn't a chance of the virus getting in. So he might have had to quarantine for a long time. So he ultimately decided, all right, it's not worth it for me to go to then have to sit out for 2 weeks. The Lou Will situation, he was going to go, he went home for a funeral and he already was back in the bubble by the time stuff came out. But with the way that things played out, it was kind of the same thing, right? Where he ended up in a high risk place. I think for the league, didn't matter. It was a strip club. I think if he was at a restaurant, even if he was just at like a packed restaurant or something, right? Or if he went to a bar or he went to, I don't know, some indoor store in a mall where there were 100 people there, right? Like he was just in an area where there was a ton of people inside. And the league really, the whole point of this bubble is that you've got to keep the virus out. Because if it gets in and people start getting sick in the bubble, then all hell breaks loose.
Like that, like the MLB recently.
That's right. Just like what happened with MLS had the bubble. They had a couple teams had to drop out completely because they had outbreaks of the virus. Yet you mentioned what's going on with the Marlins. Like their whole situation's a mess, right? So they want to try. Like right now, they haven't had a single positive test in the bubble. So they want to keep it that way. So like Lou Will's probably fine, but he's going to quarantine a few extra days to make sure that he's good and that the NBA can keep this thing as healthy for everybody as possible.
So basically the NBA is just saying leave at your own discretion because you're going to have to quarantine when you get back.
Well, it's like they're not making anybody stay there, right? Like there's like a 120-page protocol. I have the thing. It says very clearly in there, like, hey, look, if you want to leave, like you can leave at any time. We're not making you stay here. But if you decide to leave and it's not for an excused reason, you're going to have to quarantine for 10 to 14 days. Right? So like Gordon Hayward's going home for his the birth of his child in September. Dennis Schroeder and Mike Conley are in late August. Those guys have those all cleared ahead of time. They can go. They have testing all set up. They'll go. They'll get tested every day. They'll come back. They'll quarantine. Right? Zion Williamson left because he had a family emergency. He came back. He quarantined for 4 days. So they're not saying to guys, you're not allowed to leave. It's just that if you do leave, if you have a valid reason to leave and you test negative every day you're gone, when you come back, you can quarantine for 4 days. If you don't get tested, or if there's a situation where you're in an environment that's a little unsafe, then you might have to quarantine for longer to make sure the virus doesn't get in.
See, and you just said that they were leaving in September, right? I thought that this was only going on for a month, but
the bubble? Oh no.
Yeah,
no. That's going on until I checked into my hotel this week and they said, hello, Tim, we have you here for 78 nights. And I said, that sounds like a really long time for me to be in one place.
Yeah.
If this thing goes as it's supposed to, the playoffs will start in mid to late August, and they'll go until mid-October. So there'll hopefully be basketball from now until, after Columbus Day, hopefully.
So yeah, that's crazy. I don't know why I thought it was only a month. Maybe it was a month away.
It might only be a month. And something could happen and it could go sideways, but I certainly hope not. Hopefully we're here for 3 months and this thing goes to its, natural conclusion.
You being outside of the bubble, do you have any other restrictions than them? Because you're not technically in the bubble, but you can't go anywhere, right? Like, how do they monitor all that? Like,
yeah, I mean, I don't have the same kind of restrictions they do. I can move around a little bit, but I'm also not really interested in moving around at all, right? Like, there's a lot of COVID cases down here. I don't want to get sick.
Yeah.
And also, like, I'm going to be at the gym 12 hours a day. So I'm basically going to wake up, work out, then work all day, and then come back and pass out and do it again for 75 days.
Work as you're watching baskall.
It's really, really difficult work, but it won't be bad. But I have the ability to move around if I want, but I'm not going to have time anyway, even if I wanted to.
Really. I mean, not really, until you get super bored maybe, but I don't think that's possible.
I don't think that's going to happen the way this is going to go. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be fun. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I'm excited because I think it's like even I kind of been keeping up with the UFC recently and like their Fight Island that they
Fight Island. That's right.
I love it. That's so cool in Abu Dhabi, but like that, I just think it's so awesome how like these organizations can set all this up and like get the sports back and going. And if they could do that for high school sports, I mean that'd be great, or college sports. But obviously they can't really do that because there's, they're not multimillionaires getting
right.
to play. And so I kind of wanted to ask, how does this all work? Like, are there not all the teams that are in obviously are going to make the playoffs, right?
So there's 22 teams who are here in Orlando.
Okay.
So they're all going to play 8. They're calling them seeding games.
Yeah.
They're really just regular season games that they're not calling regular season games because for some reason.
Yeah.
So they're all going to play 8 games, and then the playoffs are going to start. Okay. So the top 7 teams in each conference, like normal, will make the playoffs for sure. Top 7 teams by record, they'll all make it. And then the 8th seed will either just automatically make the playoffs, or if they're within 4 games of the 9th place team, if the 9th place team is less than 4 games back, they're going to play in a play-in tournament where the 8th seed has to win 1 of 2 games and the 9th seed has to win both. So right now, Memphis and Portland are the 8 and 9 seeds. If the thing ended now, Memphis would play Portland in a play-in tournament. Memphis would have to win 1 out of 2. Portland would have to win 2 out of 2.
Okay.
And then once they set that up and they have the 8 playoff teams, then it's like it always is, and it's just 4 best-of-7 rounds all the way through.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So when we were talking earlier, or were you going to say something, Ethan?
No? Oh.
No, I'm good.
When we were talking earlier, you said that the games weren't going to be as competitive or like as like intense, which obviously they're not going to be as intense because there's not thousands of people screaming like and yelling and cheering. But is everything like, if they win this, is it still going to be like an NBA championship, like a banner on their wall, or is this kind of its own separate like NBA bubble championship? Like, is it kind of a separate thing, or are they all like, is it all its own?
So a couple things. When I said it wasn't going to be as competitive, what I meant was that like these seeding games are going to be kind of like extended preseason, I think, for some of these teams.
But like for the top teams, because they're
yeah. Like say the Bucks, right? The Bucks play the Bucks play the Celtics tonight on Friday. The Bucks have nothing to play for right now. They're way ahead. They're like 6 or 7 games up on the Raptors. I think they'd have to lose every single game, and the Raptors have to win 6 or 7 or 8 games to catch them and get the 1 seed. Yeah. So they're going to get the 1 seed. So I don't see Milwaukee playing guys 35 minutes a game. They don't normally anyway, but I don't see them playing guys 35 minutes a game in these seeding games. They just want to be ready for the playoffs to start, right? I think the teams have stuff to play for, like Memphis and Portland play today. Like, that's going to be a crazy game. Like, Portland's got to win that game. They're going to be playing really hard. So I do think there's going to be a lot of competition from that standpoint for teams that have stuff to play for.
Yeah.
And as far as your question about the championship goes, I think this championship is going to stand out, but it's going to stand out because it is, in my opinion, maybe the hardest one anybody's ever had to win. When you look at everything that's gone on this season and the mental strength and fortitude it's going to take to not only have gone through the past 4 months, but with everything that's going on in the world, with COVID and the social unrest in the country and everything else, to then be in a bubble for 3.5 months, be away from your family this whole time, and then find a way to persevere through all that and win a title. I think whoever manages to win this thing is going to be remembered forever, just because of the sheer weight of the accomplishment. I think that it's going to be for a team to find a way to come through this thing and be crowned champion.
Right. So last thing for just like talking about the NBA bubble, and then we'll kind of get into some other topics. Predictions. So you said tonight that it was Thursday night, Pelicans, Jazz, and Clippers, Lakers. Who do you got for those?
I have no idea. For the for the games that have already been played when this airs. I think the Jazz will probably no, that's fine. I think the Jazz will probably win. I don't think Zion's going to play a ton in the game.
Yeah.
So I think the Jazz will win, and I would guess the Clippers will win. But I don't think either team's going to play that game super hard. So
That makes sense.
We'll see.
All right. And then, so in kind of the end game, who do you think is going to come out on top for the entire, NBA bubble championship?
I think the Clippers are the best team. I thought that all year.
Yeah.
So I think they'll probably win. But probably it's just going to come down to who's the healthiest, who avoids COVID, who avoids injuries. You have guys playing every other day for basically 7 weeks. The NBA playoffs are not usually like that. There's usually a lot of breaks in between. It's not going to be a lot of breaks here. So I think, I would pick the Clippers if you say, hey, you have to pick a team.
Yeah.
But I think it's really just going to be whoever is able to persevere through this thing and stay healthy and survive to the end. It's going to be kind of like survival of the fittest, because it's just going to be such a mental and physical strain on all these teams that, I think that, thinking exactly how it's going to play out beforehand, I think is a fool's errand, because it's just going to be really, really hard for these teams to go through all this stuff and make it to the other side.
And like you said, at any point, it could go downhill just as fast as it all started.
Doesn't take much for the virus to get in and wreak havoc, and then who knows what happens, right? Like, again, knock on wood, hopefully it stays out and everything stays good. I think the NBA got through the scariest part. The first couple of weeks are usually the trickiest part, getting in. We saw with MLS after the first couple of weeks they were okay.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, this is a very fragile thing. It's called a bubble for a reason, right? Bubbles aren't exactly the hardest things. I mean, it doesn't take much to pop it. So fingers crossed that the NBA can keep this thing together and get to the end, and we can see a champion, and then we'll see what happens after that.
Yeah.
Do you know of any team that you think specifically is going to have an issue with players deciding not to join the bubble? Because I know specifically that for the Lakers, like Avery Bradley decided not to go for family reasons, and then that seemed like it was going to hurt them, and they signed J.R. Smith, and he looks like he's playing pretty good.
Yeah,
he went like 6 for 7 from 3.
Yeah, JR went nuts in that last scrimmage game. We'll see. I mean, if you're relying on JR for if he's kind of a luxury item, I think it's one thing.
Yeah.
If you're relying on JR, I think it's a very different thing. I don't think anybody's going to opt out of the bubble now, Ethan. I think we're pretty well set with who's there for the most part, barring some kind of family emergency, they have to leave and they can't come back. But I don't think anybody is going to opt out like Avery is now. But I do think that the Lakers losing Avery is a really big deal. I think he's a little overrated as a player, but when you look at their team, they don't have a lot of perimeter depth as it is. And taking out one of their good perimeter players off that team, like let's say they have to play Houston in the second round, right? Houston's running around out there with all these 6'7" guys playing super small. Well, the Lakers will probably try to play JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard. Probably won't really work. They'll probably have to downsize some, playing Anthony Davis at center. If you do that, then you're now having to play more perimeter guys, and they don't have a lot of perimeter guys to play. So I think that Avery's not a huge name, but I do think that him being out could really cause them a lot of trouble. And I think, obviously, for the Wizards, I know the Wizards aren't good, but if the Wizards had Bradley Beal and Davis Bertans playing in the bubble, they would beat the Nets and they would be the 8th seed because this Nets team is terrible. So the fact that their guys are out, Bertans because of injuries and Beal because of an injury also, I think that they're probably going to struggle to pass Brooklyn when they would have otherwise if their guys were available to play, because this Nets team is just really, really bad.
So the whole situation may have affected the lower seeded teams a lot more, but in the end, the teams that we thought were going to be coming out on top or were going to be in the finals or the conference finals are still going to be the same teams.
I would think so. I mean, look, in basketball, you guys know this, right? I mean, in basketball, generally, if you have the best player, you're probably going to win, right? For the most part. Not always, but for the most part, because, there's only 5 guys on the court. So if you have LeBron, right, he can have a massive influence on the game. Whereas if you're playing soccer or football, like some sport or baseball, right, where you're dealing with way more people trying to play, one player can only have so much impact on the game. Obviously, like a quarterback has a big impact too, but you guys know what I mean. Like There's just so many other people involved. In basketball, one star player can make a bigger difference than any other sport.
Yeah,
So I think that, again, assuming those guys are healthy, Ethan, I think your point is right that generally we see the same 4 or 5 teams that we thought at the beginning of the season are the best teams at the end of the season. I don't think it's going to be a lot different this time around either.
So I kind of want to get into just general kind of questions about the NBA and just basketball and whatever.
Sure.
So first, I kind of wanted to talk about the rookies coming into this year. And
The upcoming draft, you mean?
what?
The upcoming draft, you mean?
No, sorry, last year's, like this year's.
Zion and Ja. Got you. Yep.
Yeah, all of them. Like, so do you think that Zion is going to have as big of an impact as what everyone is kind of expecting or hoping?
Like over the course of his career?
Yeah.
I'm a kind of a Zion skeptic, I guess I would say. I think he seems like a great kid, and he's a heck of a player. He's super fun to watch. So I'm rooting for him personally. But the amount of injuries he's had and kind of the size of that he plays at, I think it's fair to wonder kind of what his long-term durability situation is going to be, right? We've already seen, he missed a big chunk of this year. He had had a couple of things at Duke last year.
Yeah.
He's already a bigger guy as it is, and he's a young guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I certainly hope that he's healthy because he's fantastic to watch, and he's a really unique player at his size and speed and strength. He's almost like a 6'5" center in the NBA, which is just like a completely unheard of thing. But I think if you were like, to me, if I'm betting on Ja or betting on Zion in terms of which one I think is going to have more long-term value, I feel better betting on Ja just because I think he's going to be a lot more durable than Zion is.
Yeah. And and we were going to talk about this upcoming draft, so the one after this season. I want to kind of just talk for a second about Lamell Ball.
Mm-hmm.
And just because and it's kind of the same sort of question, but do you think that he is NBA ready, or like NBA, like it will be as good of a player as everyone thinks, kind of like what we were talking about with Zion?
Yeah, I'm curious to see what LaMelo looks like, right? Like his brother, his shooting numbers at the lower levels have not been, like, his shot looks better than his brother's, but the production hasn't really been there.
Right.
But he's a really good passer. He's a skilled big guard, right? He can handle the ball. He can do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see what he looks like. I think he's going to be drafted pretty high in this draft. I think he's going to get a chance to see what he can do. So, I'm not exactly sure either way. I haven't personally seen him enough to really make an opinion either way, but this draft class is kind of weak. I think he's going to be in the top 5 to 7 picks probably, and we'll see how it goes. Certainly, it's going to be interesting to watch.
Right. And it's so weird because, like, in the media a lot, like Overtime or like Ball's Life and stuff like that, you see all these younger guys' highlights and like all their mixtapes and everything like that, and you think that, oh wow, they're gonna like have a great NBA career, they're gonna be great NBA players, greatest of all time, whatever. But a lot of times it's not. When they're up against that, NBA level competition, it's obviously a lot harder and it's a lot more challenging than what it was for them in high school. And sometimes they don't do as well. And like, so many guys nowadays are just the best top guys are not even bothering going to college or not. I just think it's so weird how there used to be like one path, it seemed like, to go to the NBA, and now there's like so many opening up. Like, do you think that that's better almost, or like, what's your take on that?
No, I think you're right. I think if you go back to, say, the early 90s, right? Like guys like Shaq and Chris Webber and all these guys,
Right.
they all would go at least 2 or 3 years in college, if not 4. Tim Duncan went 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we get into the mid-90s. You have all these guys coming out of high school, right? Then you have the influx of the international players, guys like Dirk and Tony Parker and Pau Gasol and That's really kind of changed the paradigm too. And now you've kind of seen things shift a little bit again, where you have guys like LaMelo and Terrence Ferguson going overseas and playing, and Brandon Jennings going to Europe. Got Darius Baisley getting a New Balance endorsement deal to not play basketball for a year, basically, and just work out in the gym and then go get drafted. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways that guys can get to the league now, because you have talent scouts everywhere. People know what's going on across the world, and it's not. I think it's good because these guys deserve, to me, the chance to go make money as soon as they are able to, and if you can. Now the NBA has this G League program too, where they have Jalen Green and these guys who are just going to go get paid basically to be in the G League for a year and play on a G League select team. I think that's good.
Yeah.
I think the fact that there's more opportunities for younger guys to go make money sooner and start their careers sooner, I think is great. Like if guys want to go to college and play at Duke or Kansas or Carolina or Bonaventure or whatever school they want to go to, right? Damon College, that's good. But if they have the ability to get drafted or the ability to go play in this G League thing or to go play in Australia or in Europe or whatever, that, to me, more power to them. They should be able to go make money and start the careers when they want.
Right. And that's kind of I saw a thing on Twitter, like on the news, that the NCAA was going to start allowing kids to be making money like off of their name and stuff like that starting next year, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it's so – because you think like for like the average person, going to college is a very expensive thing, and it's not very often that you get a scholarship for athletics or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that. So most people would think that going to college and getting it all paid for would be enough, almost. But some of these guys that get scholarships and stuff, they don't have, like, they come from nothing. Like, they don't have money for college to spend. And so I definitely agree that, I saw a guy contract a junior this year, already has a contract with that G League program for $500,000 in 1 year. And,
Mm-hmm.
that's more money than most people will make, everyone will make out of college for their first year. So, it's like you said, more power to them.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. And look, you're right that it's certainly a pretty big deal to get a full ride scholarship to a D1 school somewhere, right? I'm not making light of that, but at the same time, these players are making millions and sometimes billions of dollars for the NCAA and for their schools. So the fact that they can get some money for their likeness that's being sold, right, for stuff that their face is on or their jersey number is on, to me, that's only fair. Like Zion Williamson, I think about how many people bought Zion Williamson. I think he was wearing number 1.
Yeah.
There's so many Zion Williamson Duke number 1 jerseys that were sold last year. He ought to get a little bit of that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Even so, they sold out like every single game when he was playing.
That's right.
That's right. And all that money goes straight to that college too.
Yeah. So I think it's good. I think the players getting a little bit of it is good. It's the NCAA is an enormous business, and I think they can stand to give a little bit back to the people that are making them all the money.
Right.
Do you think that if the NBA never came out with the rule where you have to take a year leave at least from high school and can't come to the NBA straight from high school, that more of the players that would have deserved to get money from college would have just gone straight to the league, and then the players that were playing in college now would just be happy with the full ride scholarship and wouldn't want to get paid, and we wouldn't have this issue?
Yeah, I think because of football, Ethan, you're probably always going to have this situation, right? Because the younger guys can't really go to the NFL physically yet for a variety of reasons. So you make a good point. I still think, though, that, let's say you're trying to think. Say Mateen Cleaves. I know he was a first-round pick, but, a guy who didn't have an NBA career, really, right? Or at least a middling career. Yeah. If you're, a legend at a school, like Andrew Nicholson even say, right? He's at Bonaventure. He's a superstar at Bonaventure for 4 years. He's not going to get as much money as if you're playing at Alabama or someplace, but still, if he could get some money from stuff around there, why not, right? To me, I think I think it's just fair that if these guys are generating so much money for these schools, that they can get a little bit back themselves when, again, the stuff that they're talking about giving them is like they're allowed to like lend their likeness to an advertising campaign, or they get some money from jerseys that are sold, or this kind of stuff, right? It's like, it's not like they're saying, you know, if the coach is making, if Mike Krzyzewski's making $10 million a year, right?
Yeah.
I think the players that he's playing, that are playing for him, I think can at least get a little bit of walk around money. Because that's the thing. Like the NCAA would always say stuff like, oh, these guys can go get a job. And it's like, well, if you're playing college sports, like I ran cross country in college for a year and I was bad. But like the amount of time that I put in to running cross country in college is crazy. It was like a 40-hour week job. And I was on a terrible, like I was not good. And I was on a cross country team that was not good. Imagine if you're like on the basketball team at Bontemps, now that they're good, or you're on like Duke's basketball team, right? Like that's a job. You don't have time. It's not like when Kyrie was in school, he'd be like, hey, Coach K, I got to go work in study hall at the library today to make some walk around money. I can't come to practice.
Yeah.
Right? Like that ain't happening.
No.
So
Especially because they still have school.
yeah, right. They're supposed to go to school and go to practice and do all this stuff. It's like there's not enough hours in the week. So I think the fact that these guys are making so much money for everybody involved, and they're the one group involved that isn't making any money off it, I think they deserve to get something. So I think this likeness thing is a long time coming, and you know, I'm glad for their sake that it is going to happen. I think it's going to be a good thing.
The only thing about this that I will say is that when I watched like Jalen LeCue, he was like mixtape legend, like, and he reclassified, and so basically he went to like that prep school, Brewster Academy.
Yep.
That was his year away from high school technically, and he went straight to the G League. But I mean, that's where he's been for, you know, a year or 2 years, and it's just, I don't know if like guys might have a better chance going to college just to get ready for that next, you know, like, because some guys,
different guys, to your point, different guys take different paths, right? Like Jalen LeCue, I think, is with the Suns this year. He's been like, I think he's on a two-way, or he's playing, going back and forth with their G League team and playing with them some too. He's in the bubble right now. You know, some guys take a while to develop, right? And maybe they'd be better off if they were playing more. Some guys, you know, come out of high school or 1 year out of college and they're ready to play right away. Right. Some guys will come out like that, and it takes them a couple years to kind of get themselves in the right situation and the right fit, and then their careers kind of take off, right? So I don't think that there is a guaranteed right path.
Right.
I think it's just more that, like, hey, if you can come out of college and you can get a rookie contract for a few $2 million right away, you know, I think it's hard for guys to say no to that. Right. Even if maybe they should take another year to work on their game more.
All right. So last thing, earlier when we were talking about like Russell Westbrook having a track record with media and sometimes freaking out on the media when they ask him questions or whatever. So in your eyes, I just kind of want to get like some NBA personality things. I know we talked about that when you were here.
Sure.
So who to you is the best character, or has like the best character around the NBA, or like a few guys that you can think of?
I mean, there's a bunch of guys. I mean, like I told you guys when I was there, like 98% of these guys are pretty good dudes. And even the ones that aren't just don't like talking to the media, right? So it's like, I get it. If you're a private person, you don't want to deal with the media. That's fine. But, you know, LeBron is a great guy to deal with. Steph Curry, Joel Embiid, I deal with him a lot. He's a fun personality. Kemba Walker is a great dude. Really like him a lot. Kevin Durant's a really interesting guy. Malcolm Brogdon's a really thoughtful, interesting guy. Jaylen Brown. Trying to think. Kyle Lowry is really, you know, he's got a really cool he's a fun personality. We'll go back and forth with you and talk smack about stuff, but he's a fun guy to go back and forth with about stuff. I mean, there's a lot of guys. I mean, it's, you know, the thing I like about the NBA and about basketball is it's kind of a sport that inspires creativity in people. It's just kind of, it's like individualistic sport. It's a creative sport. And that personality kind of ebbs out into both how people play, guys, and men and women play, and also how they interact, right? I mean, there's a reason why if you go down the list of who are the most famous athletes in America right now, I mean, most of them are NBA players. There's a couple quarterbacks mixed in there. Maybe somebody like Mike Trout, maybe, probably not. But like most of it's because these basketball players have really dynamic personalities, and that makes them really fun to to write stories about and watch and observe and think about and watch play the games.
Yeah. And Ethan and I were both smiling because when you were here, so when we were talking to him before, he was telling us stories because so I guess we didn't really get into this, but for ESPN, what's like your specific job or what's your specific area?
So I cover the league, and I have kind of a specific focus on the Eastern Conference and specifically on the Celtics, Sixers, and Raptors.
Okay. So when he was here, we were talking about, his job and whatever, and he started talking about Kyle.
Remember what I said before the podcast. So
what?
Oh, just don't get me in trouble.
Anything bad? No.
I know. I'm just reminding you. That's all.
No, is it? I don't think it's bad, is it?
It's not.
No.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
Yeah. So he just referred to him as Kyle, and all my teammates and us, we were just looking at each other, and we were like, "Who's Kyle?" And we were all just looking, and so then we finally asked him, we're like, "Who's Kyle?" And he goes, "Oh, Kyle Lowry." And then it was just like, because we look at him as like this, up figure like in everything. Kyle Lowry, like you've heard his name, All-Star, NBA All-Star.
Yeah.
And you're just friends with him, and so you can refer to him as Kyle, just using his first name. But
I mean, look, the thing about my job is that like these coaches and players and executives are like basically my coworkers, right? So I wouldn't say I'm necessarily friends with Kyle or any of these other guys, but like it's like you go to work every day and this is who I interact with, right? I go to practice and I talk to the other writers and I talk to the coaches and I talk to the players. Like that's my work day. It's like, well, what did you do today? Well, I woke up and I called these 3 executives and I did this and I did that. And, that's kind of how my day went,
Like you said, it's like your job and you're more comfortable with it, obviously.
No, but I'm not. Your guys' reaction to it was funny because you were high schoolers and I was laughing, but it's also like, this happens all the time, right? You're like, people go, oh man, like how cool it, like I get asked, what's LeBron like by anyone who I ever meet, right? Like, is LeBron like he is on TV? Is Steph like he is on TV?
Yeah.
What are these guys like? Because it's like, that's my job, right? My job is to be around them. So I see them and I interact with them. And it's like, you just kind of get used to it after a while. So like, this is what my day to day is. If I was an insurance salesman, I went in an office, I would be dealing with the people in the office. Like the difference is my office is an NBA arena, right? So it's just a different thing. But yeah, no, I mean, it is certainly, you see that everybody that's going to these games, everybody's got, families at home and kids that are sick and, the parents that pass away, right? It's all the same, it's all the same stuff that quote unquote normal people have to deal with. It's just that when you're dealing with famous people, it's, when you don't know people like that, it just doesn't seem the same until you get a chance to know them. And then you realize that in the end, they're just kind of like everybody else.
Right. All right. Well, I think that is just about all the time we have. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, we should definitely have you on sometime later, maybe playoffs when they're starting up or something.
Yeah, I'll come back.
All
I'll
right.
come back for sure. I'm just only coming back if Ethan's on. I don't want to have to deal with Branson. So
that's the thing. You don't have to deal with him.
That's what,
you just kind of got to look at him while you talk to Tyler.
Yeah.
Well, I like you chiming in. So at worst, we can have the 3 of you on. But no, this is a lot of fun, man. It's great. I'm excited for you guys doing this. And like I said, it was neat to get a chance to watch you guys play. I wish I could have seen you play against better teams, but it was fun to watch you win by 1 billion. And I'm excited for all of you. So I appreciate you having me on.
For sure. All right, guys. So if you made it this far, please go down and click that subscribe button. I always forget to say it at the beginning, but click the subscribe button. leave a like, go like the Instagram picture, and tell all your friends about it. All right, so we can keep doing this. All right, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you again, hopefully.